Oh, well, it sounds like you're ashamed to be Australian.
I'm actually proud to be, an Australian that isn't racist.
It's a joke, honestly. That's right. It's all work. Why don't we change Christmas Day then?
Yeah.
Why don't we make Christmas Day the 1st of January or something?
Because I don't know if anyone has a problem with Christmas Day.
You can still have it as Australia Day, but it's when you involve the Indigenous people.
You change Australia Day to another date, they want to change the name of Australia. Oh, yes, they...
How old are you?
I'm 21.
And how old are you?
Way too old to have a discussion with a 21-year-old who seriously, with respect,
but don't you think
hasn't been around long enough to be able to know what the hell's going on.
The day that they got invaded, not a day to celebrate. But everything's a fashion statement now. Why aren't we more grateful then?
Grateful to Captain Cook?
Grateful to that it wasn't another country that came into Australia and then did worse.
What's worse than genocide? So every year, the debate rages on, should we change the date of Australia Day? It's 38 degrees. I've come to Manly Beach to see what the average Aussie punter has to say on the matter and ask them, should we change the date of Australia Day? Guys, you want to help us solve this problem for the government here? Help solve this problem, boys?
You know what? Yeah.
Should we change it or not? I'm going to send this to Albo. He'll probably sort it out after this. Voting?
Yes.
Would you change it or not?
Fucking keep it.
Just don't understand. Surely, of all the days, that is not the day that it should be.
Yeah, why not?
I don't see the harm of changing it.
No harm? Is it just pandering to a minority of people?
It's controversial, that question.
No for change the date, but we like Aboriginal Day. We're not proud of what happened,
yes,
but we're also proud Australians now, and we're over 200 years past.
Yes.
Somehow you're celebrating some people getting really hurt. Why would it be so painful to change the celebration of Australia Day to another day?
We definitely need to celebrate our Indigenous culture.
Because in Brazil we were also colonized, right?
Yes.
But this discussion never happened, as far as I know.
The discovery of Brazil is not a public holiday. It's the independence from Portugal that is the public holiday.
See, that's a learning. That's a good learning.
We didn't change the date, no.
No? What would it take to shift you to the other side?
There's no need, mate. You don't change history. It's happened.
It's happened?
It's happened.
So,
that's what it is.
What are we celebrating on Australia Day? What's the 26th?
First fleet set foot at Circular Quay.
Yeah, and they put like the British flag in there.
They did. Probably if they're going to change it to the 1st of January, which is the date we became a nation in 1901.
So then you're not a no?
There's absolutely no reason to change it. We're Australians.
Yes.
I'm happy to be an Australian. I've got an Australian flag hanging on the balcony.
And you're happy to be Australian. So
totally.
What are you celebrating as Australia Day?
I'm celebrating the fact that this country was created by European settlement on January the 26th, 1788.
Yes.
Now,
with the flag in the ground.
Well, basically, whether there's a flag in there or not, the fact is Europeans settled, and everybody has done extremely well because of that settlement.
But why wouldn't you? Yeah, you want to have a thought?
Gladly step in.
Yes.
Changing, you can still have it as Australia Day, but it's when you involve the Indigenous people.
The problem's going to be you change Australia Day to another date. They'll want to change the name of Australia. Oh yes, they will.
Well, I guess the argument could be
everything that you argue for. Believe me, there's a splinter group in there that will want to change it. So forget it.
So the argument.
Stay where you are.
So take this argument for me. So the argument would be because Australia exists because of colonisation.
Yes.
No matter how you celebrate Australia Day, the celebration of Australia as a country inherently involves colonisation, and no matter the day.
This statement, Captain Cook came here.
So hang on, before you get that, how can you still celebrate Australia Day? You would still say you can? No, like any day.
Oh, any day, yeah. It's just that this specific date is when the genocide of Indigenous people happened.
Let me ask you a question.
What if you said this? Of rape, trauma, all that stuff happened today.
That's happened in every country in the world. Believe me, trust me.
So
let me ask you this question. How would you go with the Americans if you ask an American what they think of Independence Day, July the 4th?
Yes, but what's
that got to do with the American Indians? I haven't seen anything to do with the American Indigenous people when they talk about Independence Day in America.
So that would
talk about independence from Britain.
Yes, and we're actually celebrating being subservient to Britain.
No, we're
so
not.
That's
No, we're not.
Well,
we've got a group of people that are saying, let's become a Republican. I'm a Republicanist. I'm a Republican.
So then if you're a Republican,
yep,
wouldn't you be for celebrating Australia Day on Independence Day, like when Australia became a federated country, rather than when the British put the flag in?
You could argue that, but I'll come back to my original argument. You change the name of Australia Day, there'll be a splinter group, predominantly.
How do you know that though?
I don't know anything. I don't know anything, but nor do you.
Yes.
So that's the point. You don't know either. Nor does she, and nor does she.
It's in history. It's
No. History is not an indicator of the current or the future.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
You're 21, and how old are you?
Way too old to have a discussion with a 21-year-old who seriously, with respect,
but don't you think
hasn't been around long enough to be able to know what the hell's going on?
So you think because you think age determines wisdom?
Huge,
big time.
Huge.
Thanks. Cheers. Just leave the board if you could.
I gave my opinion.
Okay. He was some heavy-handed. You don't know what you're talking about because you're just 21.
That doesn't say anything.
What's your right reply? You're clearly a yes vote. Articulate that, and then maybe a right of reply to the gentleman who, I guess, disparaged your age. A bit ageist, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, honestly, his history is completely different to our history. Like, it's still the same history line, but it's just how in depth we've learnt it. So, like, the emotional trauma of the Indigenous people in every state, like in every country, in every continent around the world. There's like the Native Indians on Thanksgiving. That's the day of their genocide that happened, and it's still people, Native Indians of America, are still trying to fight to change that specific date. Like us Australians and Indigenous people are trying to change the date of Australia Day when genocide was committed on this day by Captain James Cook.
I wish it wasn't so emotionally charged, but as long as we're celebrating something that happened, do you know what I mean? Do it once a year, I'm happy. I'm on the fence with this.
Change the date, but simply make it the last Friday in January, so it's always a long weekend.
We should celebrate Australia, but it's just the wrong day for it. Like, this is not a day to celebrate, and Australia can be celebrated any day of the year.
But what if they're still upset even when we change the date?
Well, at least we've done something. Like,
okay, so
if we've put in the effort and we've like showed that we care, because right now it just seems like we don't care.
I actually don't mind. I've got plenty of Aboriginal mates and they don't care. So,
okay.
Yeah, so
you'd be a no?
Yeah, no, probably a no.
If I was to edge you towards a yes, if Indigenous cultures are like, listen, like this has been a day of mourning and sadness since like 1930s.
Oh, can we wait down?
Yeah. Would that shift you at all?
My only concern
yes
would be, and I've seen it in sort of other doing, is you're now accepting that you people have come to our country and taken all our land, so now we want you to pay $10,000 for every piece of land, every house in the country to the Aboriginals because we own it and that's your rent.
Well, I'm not celebrating Australia Day.
No, you make sure everyone knows that when you look around. You're like, I'm not here. I'm just swimming.
Yeah, I'm just swimming.
Can I chuck a yes on it? Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Could I change your mind on it?
I think if I was given the correct, well-structured kind of debate on it, sure.
You're on the fence.
I'm not necessarily on the fence. I'm very much yes-leaning. I think what Australia Day is now to probably the majority of the population is it's an opportunity to celebrate a fairly uniquely Australian value, which is mateship. Most people view it as an opportunity to be with their mates and celebrate that. And it's more about togetherness than necessarily the history of it.
Yes.
Now, with that said, the benefit of changing the date is that it moves it away from the negative connotations of the history without necessarily affecting the positive connotations of what the day is now. That's why I lean more towards changing the date.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily completely fixated on that side of things. I'm open to hearing every side of that argument.
Yeah.
But I think that for the people that have an issue with the date as it is currently, there's not really, if you want to make those people happy and make them feel more comfortable about the day, there's really no negative impact to the other for changing it either, because you can still be aware of the history.
Yes. Okay, what about the slippery slope argument? Someone made it just then. Listen, we're capitulating to a small minority of Australians. We're being shamed out of, we're not allowed to wear Australian flags anymore. Woolworths won't bloody sell us flags anymore. Like, we're being, our culture is kind of being shamed. So now people don't want to have barbecues on Australia Day. People aren't having ceremonies on Australia Day. So we're kind of being shamed by a small minority of people because, my parents are immigrants. I'm not even a settler. Like, technically, sure, I'm benefiting from this society, but I mean, it wasn't even my ancestors, right? So like, why am I kind of looked at as one of the problems here? That might be one of the arguments.
But what's wrong with having a date that everyone can enjoy it and no one feels anything negative about it?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. Like, if you change the date that makes everyone happy, what's wrong with that?
Yes. Well, they might say, well, if you change the date, we're still celebrating a colonial country that Australia, it exists because it took land and destroyed another culture. So celebrating Australia on any day, we're still colonisers and we've still, depending where your lineage comes from, did these despicable acts. So
You could say that about almost any country, though. You know, we've grown past that. You know, there's still a lot of issues in Australia, but we're now a country that a lot of people can come to, and having a date that everyone can celebrate that is good, and having a date where not everyone can celebrate that isn't good.
Oh, I'm definitely yes for changing.
You're a solid yes? What's the strongest argument you have for going yes?
I just feel sorry for the Indigenous people, you know, that they're in their home.
Get out of here, boys. Get out. Shoot.
And people are celebrating on a day when they're probably feeling a bit, uncomfortable and, you know, sad about the whole thing. So, I just don't think it's right.
It's a joke, honestly. You know, it's right. It's all work.
What would it take to change your mind?
But why change the date for? What's it going to prove?
Well, I guess the argument would be, since maybe the 1930s, 1940s, Indigenous culture had been mourning the day on this day when the British settlers came in and eradicated their way of life, essentially. So it's not great for that culture. So then the argument would be, why not be inclusive? Why not make a day that maybe we could create a new celebratory culture around, maybe include some of their perspectives and try and include a group that is feeling a bit excluded? That would be one of the arguments.
Yeah, but if you're going to change the date, right, you might well change the country too. If you're going to change the date, you might well change the country too.
Why don't we change Christmas Day then? Yeah. Why don't we make Christmas Day the 1st of January or something?
Because I don't know if anyone has a problem with Christmas Day.
It's been here for 200 years or more, so why change it now?
Well, actually, it became a public holiday in 1994 or 1993 or something, and then before that, it only came in like the 1940s. So they only randomly picked this day, and the actual day that they're celebrating is when Captain Cook put the flag in the ground. So technically, it could be argued that we're celebrating Britain.
Yeah, but Britain's got nothing to do with us, though. We're Australia. We're not Britain, and we're Australia.
Yes, but we're celebrating Britain because most countries celebrate Independence Day when they became independent from Britain, like the US. They celebrate when they're independent, whereas we're celebrating when we were colonised. So it's like America celebrating when the British landed in the US, not when the USA rebelled, went to war, and then won a war against Britain. So that would be an argument to say we could have a better day even for you.
Okay. So what day do you think we should have it on then?
Well, the argument for that would be maybe January 1st when we became federated as a country. Like all the states came together and said, we are now officially Australia.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, maybe, no?
Doesn't make sense.
Final vote, you can put a magnet on the board.
We might well change this country.
It doesn't make any sense to me, but anyway.
So where would you put it then after that?
Definitely no.
Definitely no?
Yeah.
You mean no?
Change the country. We won't call this Australia.
Why don't we change Easter? Why don't we change birthdays?
Yeah. You can make that argument. I'm open. We can.
It's just ridiculous.
We can.
It's just ridiculous.
If you change the date, you've got 364 other days to change it.
I would just say that we can choose literally any other day and celebrate. Like, I'm so proud to live in this country and to be Australian, and I want to, show my pride. I just don't want to show it on a day that hurts people.
So I would change the date, or actually just banish the day, because...
Banish it altogether, no public holiday. Unpopular position.
Actually, no, you know what? I would change the date to a day where the Aboriginals Indigenous people can pick the day that they think is best. Okay, I'm not the best at this politics, but I just feel like...
Punters.
I don't even know. But I would allow them to pick the day that they think is best, that feels much more comfortable for everyone, but as well as because it's day of colonisation, it's not really a day to celebrate.
Complex.
It is complex.
Yes, that'll do it.
It's changed heaps. Okay. It's changed heaps. I remember everyone wanted to be Australian, and now no one wants to be Australian. Everyone's ashamed of it. It's a day. And if you look at the bigger picture, I don't care about when they came or when they don't came. I like to celebrate that I live here. and this is great. And
you possibly couldn't do that on another day where a group of people...
every day of your life, but we get the day off today, or we choose to go to work, we get double time.
And if the government did change the day and gave you another day off and double time for that, would you be okay with that?
Again, the days don't bother me, but the fact that, the discussion in the first place is what bothers me. Shouldn't have to change it. It should just live life the way it is, whether it's... Everyone reads too much into it, because this discussion was never a thing when I was a kid.
It could be a sign of division, but it could be seen as a sign of a country discovering, hang on a minute, there are some groups in society that have been struggling, that have suffered under this and haven't done as well as me. So maybe I can become aware of some of the dark side of our history rather than papering over it, going, oh, move on, get over it.
Have a day to celebrate being Australian? Absolutely, but today's not the day.
Do you celebrate Australia Day or no?
I have done in the past,
yes.
Put my foot down this year and said no, not doing it.
So would you celebrate Australia Day if it wasn't on the 26th?
Yeah, I'd like to.
And then if that day became mired in controversy as well, what would you do then?
Very good question. What would you do?
I'm asking the questions here. You're answering them.
I think if we want to celebrate Australia, we need to move it to a date that doesn't signify mass genocide. I think it's so hypocritical to be like, oh, Australia is so great, but have it on a day that is completely offensive to Indigenous Australians.
Yeah, come on, let's just chill out. I'm not celebrating genocide. I'm here. I'm at the beach. I love Australia Day. I'm having a barbecue with my mates. That's all I'm doing. Why is that so bad?
Well, I think honestly it's more just about respect. You can come to the beach, but at the same time recognize that this day that you're at the beach is a day that's very upsetting for many people. You can have a barbecue on another day, you can go to the beach another day, but if you do come to the beach today, like we are, it's in recognition that today is actually a very sad day for many people, and that it's about recognizing that and not kind of deciding that we know better. I think we've gone out of our way to not wear like an Australian flag or anything like that.
Yes.
We're just here to come to the beach. We're not here at all to be a part of the occasion.
Someone might say, oh, well, it sounds like you're ashamed to be Australian. Is that?
No. Oh, no, of course not. No. I'm actually proud to be, an Australian that isn't racist, that, doesn't support mass genocide. I'm proud to be an Australian that is, politically aware,
Yes?
Yeah, it's just proud to be Australian. That's why we want to have it on another date so we can celebrate being Australian.
Yeah. Yes.
That's exactly.
How old are you guys?
Yes.
I'm 15.
16.
Okay, so you're the younger generation. Different perspective to the older generation, I suspect.
Yeah.
How do you see the older generation that are like, what's the point? We might as well change the country. This thing, we're pandering to a minority of people. What's your perspective on, let's say, the boomer generation?
Well, we're constantly growing as a country and we're making changes throughout the world, being better people for everyone. And I feel like slowly racism, homophobia and other topics like that are slowly dying down because we are trying to improve and make the world a more peaceful, happy place. And I feel like this is the next step for that.
And I also think saying things like, oh, why are we catering towards minority? Well, it's a minority because of genocide, because of the stolen generations, because of, historical and systematic oppression, systemic oppression. That's why it's a minority. So how on earth are we to say, oh, it's just a minority? Well, it's just a minority because of institutionalized oppression.
Yes. Yeah. And then one last argument they would say is, it could have been worse. Like the Portuguese, I've heard it today, and the Portuguese, they would have done way worse. It's lucky the British, could have been way worse. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it was pretty bad.
Better or worse, it's still really bad.
I don't think it could have been worse as an excuse for genocide. It's still genocide.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of people who I could say allegedly are sheep and just following a trend are not looking into the true roots of what Australia Day really means.
So what? Tell me what you know about the true roots of Australia Day.
It's all about the colonisation of Australia, right? So Captain Cook put the Great Britain flag up on that date. Yep. But they didn't really colonise Australia or enter Australia on that date. So we can't say that there is an invasion of Australia.
Well, he put it in and said, yoink. I think that was a paraphrase.
Okay, well then why aren't we more grateful then?
Grateful to Captain Cook?
Grateful to that it wasn't another country that came into Australia and then did worse.
What's worse than genocide?
How do you have the proof that says that everyone was genocide?
Oh, there's documentations that show hunting permits for Indigenous people that colonies were like, I've got my Indigenous person. Slave. Yeah, slave. So that would be the evidence being how does it get worse than that?
Okay, well, the thing is that Aboriginals were working with the British at the time.
Some were, sure.
Having jobs, and yet...
But they were slaves.
Well, look, I would argue that. I would argue that they were actually slaves. However, what if another country decided to invade, colonise Australia? Would we have the same country that we do today?
What if they did it? Well, arguably not. We'd be speaking Portugal. No, we're just chatting. That's fine. We don't want to be aggressive though.
No,
we want to be friendly. You don't know him, do you?
No, don't know him.
Okay.
He's just decided to come in and give his 10 cents. So.
Well, I mean that is what we're all doing. But yes.
But you're interviewing me.
Sure, but then he might have an interesting point as well. So
go ahead. People were happy and actually grateful of what this country has become. You know, everything could still be normal.
Could we do both, where we say, I'm happy Australia's provided a lot of opportunities, but then there is a subsection of Australian society that have the worst outcomes in the world. It's almost like a third world country with education, development, deaths, like premature deaths, infant immortality. Like, you look at the stats, there is a subsection of Australians, Indigenous Australians, that are on par with certain African countries. And so for them, they would go, this is not great for me. So then, could we have a day that considers, listen, Australia has some good things, but we don't have to ignore the dark side. Could we just take one little step towards acknowledging some of our dark history?
I wouldn't even call it dark history. Some people may...
So genocide isn't dark history?
But it's not genocide. You can call it whatever you want.
When they wipe out an entire clan...
Well, they didn't, though, because that's why you still have Aboriginal people today. So if your main
there are some tribes that don't exist because they were wiped out.
Yeah, but if your main focus is on Aboriginal people, why are they still alive today? And why are they still out and about, still living their same culture? But if we took it from that and say, okay, isn't things better for them?
And people would severely disagree and say, like, outcomes for this group are horrific and they are not doing well, and they are saying, hey, we need a leg up in this.
But is Australia Day to blame for that?
They would argue, like, no, we know it's not a panacea, but it's saying, hey, you're an Australian, they're Australians, here's a day that's really sad for us. Could we have a day that's maybe more unifying?
If you
say no to that?
I say no, but you still keep everything the way it is. However, if a certain minority or a group of people want to celebrate a day on another day regarding anything, it could be, you know, the foundation of their culture, that has to be separate to what Australia Day really is about.
Yeah, change the day. Yeah, absolutely.
So you're like, solid yes? Is this just tokenism to be like, yeah, change the date? Well, outcomes for Indigenous people, not great. We're not really doing anything to support them in meaningful, tangible ways that change statistics. This is just corporates support it because it costs them nothing and it changes nothing. It's cheap change. So that would be my argument. It's the easy way out that just kicks the can down the road, and, you know, what's it going to change?
You could argue that, but I just think that...
You could, but no.
You could argue that, but I just think that if there's something that's as easily fixed as altering
You're hoping it's easy to fix?
Literal date. No, not the reconciliation side, not...
The tensions?
Not the much broader, more nuanced, complicated side of things, but the literal date is such an easy thing. Everything else is much more complicated and much more challenging to fix, but the literal date, if that causes people a whole lot of grief and causes numerous communities across Australia, hardship and struggle and everything, then that for me just seems like a no-brainer.
I think there are plenty of examples around the world with countries where they've had a really challenging history and a past that, you know, you could look back on and be really upset about and be, really...
Most colonised countries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are still plenty of examples where nations have been able to address that in a way that is kind and clear and talks about the history openly, in a way that, acknowledges that there is hurt and pain for a number of people. And I think because it impacts, a significant part of our population, not by size, but by significance of our history, we should acknowledge it in a way that's kinder. And for most Australians, it doesn't matter, and that's why I think it should change.
And so this conversation isn't just a complete distraction to those things you're talking about, though?
I think it's a shame that it gets used and weaponised. at the end of the day, it's a day in summer, and people are obviously out and about. But I think because it harms a small group of our population in a way that doesn't acknowledge our history, to go back to history, we should consider the ways that we can acknowledge them by changing the day.
So if we can't celebrate Australia Day on this day, why would it not be the exact same conversation on another day? Because isn't the problem Australia as a colonised country built on the back of exploitation itself?
But I think changing the date is a signal of recognition of the past, and it's actually acknowledging the work that we have to do. And I think that could be more of a way of looking at the
like
date.
a baby step.
Date. Yeah, I think that's an acknowledgement of the past. And by making this change, I think more Australians would be on board with the conversation to begin with.
Yes.
We've had a lot of things happen in the last year as well, with the no vote going through. And I think that shows Australia has a long way to go.
Right.
But I'm hopeful. Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So it's been a day with a lot of opinions. We've heard from a lot of people. I tried to make the best arguments I could in the comments below. Tell me what you think were the best arguments for the yes case and the no case. I would think this is heavily contentious topic. It's a culture war. Sorry guys, I tried to solve it this year, but you're gonna see it again next year. This issue is severely unresolved. Australia mostly divided. A lot of yeses and then some very strong no's. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, click the bell, and I'll catch everyone in the next episode.
Do the big ones count as well?
No, they're all one.